The emergency alarms had been screaming across the Galactic Council chambers for 3 full days. The massive circular room, large enough to hold representatives from 200 different species, felt smaller than ever. Fear had a way of making everything shrink. Ambassador Jin-Ho Park sat quietly in the human delegation section, watching the chaos unfold. His dark eyes tracked the movement of countless alien forms as they argued, gestured, and shouted in languages that his translator struggled to keep up with. Beside him, Dr. Hana Choi reviewed data on her tablet, her expression calm despite the panic around them. The void tears had appeared without warning 30 cycles ago. 3 of them, each one a massive rip in the fabric of space itself. They hung in the darkness like wounds in reality, growing larger with each passing day. Soon they would swallow 3 entire star systems. 47 billion lives hung in the balance. The Arxelians had tried first. Their crystalline bodies glowed with barely contained frustration as their chief scientist explained their failure. They had woven quantum threads around the largest tear, attempting to stitch reality back together. The tear had simply grown faster, as if angered by their interference. Next came the Luminari, beings of pure energy who existed in specially designed containment suits. They attempted to fold the dimensions, to create a patch using the very essence of their being. 3 of their best scientists had been lost in the attempt, pulled into the void and never seen again. The ancient Korvathi, massive creatures that lived for thousands of years, deployed gravitational anchors. Technology so advanced that most species could not even understand the principles behind it. The void tears absorbed the anchors and expanded by another 2%. Every major power in the galaxy had failed. Now they stood in the council chambers arguing about evacuation routes and which species would be saved first. The mathematics were cruel. Even with every available ship, they could only evacuate perhaps 20 billion beings. The rest would die. Jin-Ho listened to the despair in their voices. The translator couldn't capture emotion perfectly, but he heard it anyway. These were not just politicians and scientists. These were people watching civilizations face extinction. He raised his hand. Nobody noticed at first. The human delegation was small, tucked into a corner section. Humans had only joined the Galactic Council 8 cycles ago. They were newcomers, barely noticed except as curiosities, a species that lived such short lives, driven by emotions, creating art and music alongside their science. Most species found them strange. Ambassador Park wishes to speak, his delegation's AI announced over the general channel. The chamber didn't exactly fall silent, but the volume dropped. Several representatives turned to look at the human section with expressions that ranged from curiosity to mild annoyance. The towering Korvathi Prime Chancellor gestured with one of his 4 arms, granting permission to speak. Jin-Ho stood. He was not a tall man by human standards, and compared to most species in the chamber, he looked almost childlike. His simple gray suit contrasted with the elaborate robes, armor, and bioluminescent displays worn by others. "We can do it," he said quietly. The chamber erupted, not in anger but in laughter. The sound washed over the human delegation like a wave. Some species were too polite to laugh openly, but Jin-Ho could see the amusement in their body language. Even the desperate ones managed dark chuckles. The Arxelian chief scientist's crystals chimed with what the translator labeled as condescending pity. She spoke, her voice like bells. "Young ambassador, we appreciate your species' enthusiasm. But the void tears have defeated technologies your people cannot yet comprehend. Your fusion drives are elegant. Your computer systems are adequate. But this problem requires a different approach," Jin-Ho interrupted gently. "Yes, that's exactly what it requires." Dr. Choi stood beside him, projecting data into the shared holographic display. Mathematical formulas appeared, but they were unlike anything the Council had seen. They incorporated chaos theory, resonance patterns, and something the translator struggled to explain from human quantum mechanics. "The tiers are not random," Hana explained, her voice steady. "Every solution attempted has treated them as damage to be repaired. But what if they are something else? What if they are a response?" "A response to what?" the luminary representative asked, genuine curiosity in their energy field. "To the way we've been treating space itself," Hana continued. "For millions of years, your species have been manipulating quantum fields, folding dimensions, creating artificial gravity wells. All of it works against the natural state of reality. The void tears might be reality's immune response." The chamber fell genuinely quiet now. The Korvathi Prime Chancellor leaned forward, his ancient eyes studying the young human scientist. "Impossible. Space-time does not think. It does not respond. It simply exists, according to physical laws." "Maybe," Jinho said. "Or maybe the laws are more complex than we understand. My people have a saying. When you fight the river, you drown. When you swim with the current, you survive. We would like to try swimming." "And if you fail?" asked a Verdani counselor, her leaf-like skin rustling with concern. "Those are real lives, real civilizations. This is not a laboratory experiment." "We understand," Jinho replied, "which is why we won't waste time. We have preliminary models. We need 50 cycles. If we show no progress in 20 cycles, we will step aside." The council members looked at each other. Silent communications passed between them through channels humans could not access. Finally, the Prime Chancellor spoke. "The humans have permission. 50 cycles. May fortune favor the brave, even the foolishly brave." Jinho bowed respectfully. As the session ended and representatives filed out, he heard their whispered conversations. Most predicted noble failure. Some admired human courage while pitying their naivety. A few were simply glad that someone was trying something. Back in the human delegation's quarters, Jinho activated the quantum communicator to Earth. The Crisis Response Coalition answered immediately. He explained the situation in simple terms. "We need everyone," he said. "Scientists, engineers, mathematicians, artists, musicians, psychologists. Anyone who can think differently about impossible problems." The coordinator on Earth, a woman named Sarah Kim, smiled grimly. "The fleet is already preparing. We heard about the crisis. Everyone knew you'd volunteer us." "You don't sound surprised," Jinho noted. "We're human," Sarah replied. "Someone says something can't be done. We say, 'Hold my coffee and watch this.' When do you need the team?" "Yesterday," Jinho admitted. "Then we'll arrive tomorrow. Kim out." The connection ended. Jinho looked at Hana, who was still reviewing her calculations. "Do you really think this will work?" he asked quietly. She looked up, meeting his eyes. "I think if we don't try, 47 billion people die for certain. If we try, maybe we fail, but maybe we don't. I prefer maybe." Outside the windows of their quarters, the human ships were already arriving. Smaller than most galactic vessels, more fragile, built with simpler technology. But inside each ship were humans who had heard the word impossible and decided it was just a suggestion. The galaxy was about to learn something new about humanity. Not that they were fearless. They were actually quite afraid. But fear had never stopped them before. The human fleet arrived at the Talassi system like a swarm of determined insects. 15 ships, none larger than a Korvathi scout vessel, arranged themselves in a careful formation around the first void tear. The tear itself dominated the view from every window, a massive slash of absolute nothing that seemed to swallow light itself. Lieutenant Commander Seo-jun Kim stood on the bridge of the lead ship, Harmony, and studied the phenomenon. She was a compact woman with sharp eyes and hair pulled back in a practical bun. Her uniform was simple, marked only with the patches of Earth's Crisis Response Coalition and the small flag of the United Nations. "All ships in position," reported her navigation officer. "Observers are maintaining safe distance." The observers. SEO June glanced at her secondary screen where 5 different species ships hung back, watching. They were here to document the human attempt and, she suspected, to rescue survivors when everything went wrong. The Galactic Council had been very clear that they expected failure, even if they hoped for success. "Dr. Choi, how close do you need to be?" Seo Jun asked through the comm. Hana's voice came back calm and focused. 3,000 kilometers, close enough to deploy the probe network, far enough to retreat if needed. "Define if needed," muttered the tactical officer, a young man named Marcus from New Zealand. "If the tear starts pulling us in," Hana replied matter-of-factly. "But our calculations suggest it won't. The tears respond to quantum observation and energy manipulation. Our probes are designed to do neither aggressively." Seo Jun gave the order. The fleet moved closer. Every human on every ship felt their heartbeat quicken. They were closer to a void tear than any previous mission had survived. The luminary who had been lost had been at 5,000 kilometers when the tear had reached out and taken them. Nothing happened. "Deploying probes," announced Dr. Choi. From the Harmony and 4 other science vessels, thousands of small devices launched. They looked almost primitive compared to galactic technology. Simple metal spheres, barely larger than baseballs, each containing just enough processing power to run their assigned algorithms. The probes spread out in a pattern that made no obvious sense to the observers. Not a grid, not a sphere, but something that resembled a natural formation, like leaves on a tree, or the spiral of a galaxy. "Observer ship Crystalline Witness is requesting explanation," the communications officer reported. SEO Jun opened the channel. The Arxelian captain's face appeared, facets reflecting light in patterns that indicated confusion. "Commander Kim, your probe deployment appears random. Is there a malfunction?" "No malfunction," Seo Jun replied. "The pattern is intentional. It defies standard observation protocols. There are gaps in your coverage." "Yes," Seo Jun agreed. "We left the gaps on purpose." The Arxelian captain's crystals shifted to a color that suggested deep perplexity. "Purpose? For what purpose would you intentionally create blind spots?" "To see what the tear does when it thinks nobody is watching," Seo Jun said simply. The channel went quiet for a moment. Then the Arxelian spoke again, more slowly. "Space-time anomalies do not think. They do not have awareness." "Maybe not," Seo Jun acknowledged. "But let's find out." She closed the channel and turned back to her crew. "Dr. Choi, we're in position. It's all yours." On the science deck, Hana and her team began their work. The probes activated, but not all at once. They lit up in sequence, like fireflies communicating in the darkness. Each probe ran what Hana called chaos algorithms, mathematical models that embraced unpredictability rather than trying to eliminate it. Engineer Maya Kapoor, a brilliant woman from Mumbai who specialized in quantum mechanics, monitored the data flowing back. "The tear is responding," she said, excitement creeping into her professional tone. "Look at the edge fluctuations." Hana leaned over her shoulder. The void tear's edge, which had been expanding steadily for weeks, was rippling. Not growing, not shrinking, but moving, like water disturbed by a stone. "It's curious," Hana whispered. "It's actually curious about what we're doing." "You're attributing consciousness to a space-time rupture," said Dr. Rahman, the senior physicist, but even he sounded less skeptical than fascinated. "I'm attributing response to stimulus," Hana corrected. "Watch. Probe Cluster 7, execute pattern Delta." A group of probes shifted their output. The ripple in the tier changed direction, as if drawn toward the new pattern. "It's following the complexity," Maya breathed. "The more complex the pattern, the more it responds." For 3 days, the human teams worked in shifts. They tried different patterns, different frequencies, different levels of organized chaos. The galactic observers watched in growing confusion. This wasn't science as they knew it. The humans weren't measuring and constraining. They were playing. On the 4th day, data analyst Ji-Woo Song made the breakthrough. Ji-Woo was young, barely 25, but he had a gift for seeing patterns in noise. He had been reviewing all the data when he noticed something the others had missed. The tear didn't just respond to complexity, it responded to specific types of complexity. "Dr. Choi," he called out, his voice sharp with discovery. "The tear's strongest responses correlate with natural frequencies." "Define natural," Hana said, moving to his station. Ji-Woo brought up a comparison display. "Musical intervals, ocean wave patterns, heartbeat rhythms, planetary rotations, anything that occurs in nature without artificial forcing." Maya joined them, studying the data. "That's impossible. Space-time doesn't care about music." "Doesn't it?" Ji-Woo asked. He pulled up more data. "Look at what happened when probe 247 malfunctioned and started pulsing irregularly. The tear expanded. But when we deployed the probes in that leaf pattern formation, it stabilized. Nature uses efficient patterns. The tear responds to them." Hana felt something click in her mind. The other species have been fighting the tiers with artificial constructs, quantum weaving, dimensional folding, gravitational anchors, all technology-based, all imposed from outside. And the tiers got worse, Ji-Woo finished, because their reality's immune response to artificial manipulation. "So we need to use natural patterns," Maya said slowly. "But how do you apply natural patterns to quantum mechanics?" Hana was already working on her tablet, her fingers flying. "Music, art, the rhythms of living things. We need to create resonance, not containment." She opened a channel to Commander Kim. "SEO Jun, I need to make an unusual request." "At this point, everything we're doing is unusual," Seo Jun replied. "What do you need?" "Musicians, dancers, artists, people who work with natural rhythms and patterns intuitively." The channel went silent for a long moment. Then Seo Jun laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You want to fight the void tier with a concert?" "I want to harmonize with it," Hana corrected. "The universe runs on waves and frequencies, sound, light, gravity, all of it. We've been treating the tear as an enemy. What if we treat it as an instrument that's out of tune?" "The observers are going to think we've lost our minds," Seo Jun warned. "They already think we're crazy," Hana pointed out. "We might as well be crazy in an interesting way." Seo Jun considered for exactly 3 seconds. "I'll send the request to Earth." "We've got violinists in the crisis team, I know that much. How many people do you need?" "Everyone who wants to help," Hana said. "This is going to take more than calculation. It's going to take feeling." The request went out. Back on Earth, when the Crisis Response Coalition announced they needed artists and musicians for a space-time emergency, people thought it was a joke, until they realized it wasn't. The observers watched in complete bewilderment as the second wave of human ships arrived. These didn't carry more probes or weapons or scientific equipment. They carried people with violins, drums, flutes, and electronic synthesizers. The Arxelian captain contacted Seo Jun again. "Commander, are those musicians?" "Yes," Seo Jun confirmed. "To what purpose?" Seo Jun smiled. "We're going to play the Void Tear a song. Want to listen?" The human ships rearranged themselves into a new formation. Not random this time, but geometric. A pattern that resembled a flower, with the harmony at the center and the other vessels forming petals around it. Each ship positioned itself at specific distances, creating mathematical relationships that Hana's team had calculated for days. Inside the ships, the musicians prepared. There were classical violinists from Korea and Germany, traditional drummers from West Africa and Japan, electronic composers from Brazil and India. They had been briefed on the mission, though many still struggled to understand how their art could help fight a tear in space itself. Lee Myung, a composer from Seoul, stood in the main performance bay of the ship Resonance. She was a small woman with silver hair. Despite being only 40 years old, she had written symphonies that had moved millions to tears. Now she was being asked to write something that would move reality itself. "This is insane," said Carlos, a Brazilian drummer beside her. But he was smiling as he said it. "Yes," Lee Myung agreed, "but insanity is sometimes just creativity that nobody has tried yet." Dr. Choi's voice came over the ship-wide communication. "All performers, this is Dr. Choi. I know this seems strange. I know some of you are frightened. But what I'm about to ask you to do is simple. Play, create, feel. Don't think about the science. We'll handle the mathematics. You handle the music." "What should we play?" asked a flutist from Kenya. "Whatever feels right," Hana replied. "But I'm going to give you some frequencies to work around. Think of them as key signatures. Start there, then let your intuition guide you." The frequencies appeared on everyone's displays. They were based on natural phenomena, the resonance of Earth's magnetic field, the frequency of a human heartbeat, the rhythm of ocean waves, the rotation of planets. Lee Myung studied the numbers. As a composer, she understood frequencies as music. These were notes, a chord built from the universe itself. "I can work with this," she said quietly. Commander Seo Jun opened channels to all ships. "All vessels, prepare for resonance attempt. On my mark, begin the performance. Scientists will monitor and adjust. If anyone feels uncomfortable or senses danger, stop immediately. We're not sacrificing anyone for this." The observer ships had moved even further back. The Arxelian captain had contacted the Galactic Council to report that the humans were attempting to solve a quantum mechanics emergency with music. The council members had responded with confusion, concern, and in some cases, something that might have been hope. "All performers ready?" Seo Jun asked. Acknowledgements came back from all ships. "Then let's make something beautiful. Mark." Lee Myung drew her bow across her violin. The first note was long and clear, based on the Earth's magnetic field frequency transposed up into human hearing range. On other ships, other musicians joined in. Drums beat the rhythm of a heartbeat. Flutes sang the pattern of waves. Electronic synthesizers wove it all together with harmonics that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. The sound filled the ships. It also transmitted outward, converted to electromagnetic waves and quantum vibrations that spread through space. The void tear responded immediately. "Reading fluctuation changes," Maya reported from her science station. "The expansion rate is slowing, down 0.03%. It was tiny, almost nothing, but it was the first time any attempt had created positive results. "Keep going," Hana urged the performers. "You're doing something. Don't stop." Lee Myung closed her eyes. She stopped thinking about the frequencies as numbers and started feeling them as music. Her bow moved, and the violin sang. Other musicians did the same. They stopped performing a scientific experiment and started creating art. The music changed. It became less rigid, more organic. Musicians improvised around the core frequencies, adding their own cultural traditions, their own emotional responses. A Japanese taiko drummer added rhythms from ancient festivals. An Indian sitarist wove in classical ragas. The Brazilian composer added electronic beats that pulsed like celebration. 0.5% reduction in expansion, Maya called out. "It's working. It's actually working." On the bridge of the observer ship, the Arxelian captain watched in stunned silence. The instruments clearly showed the void tier responding to the human performance. It was impossible according to every law of physics her species understood. Yet it was happening. For hours, the performance continued. Musicians worked in shifts, some resting while others played. Lee Myung coordinated between ships, creating a symphony that spanned thousands of kilometers. She treated the void itself as an instrument in the orchestra. "We need more," Hana said during a brief pause. "This is working, but not fast enough. The tear is still expanding, just slower. We need to amplify the effect." "More performers?" Seo-jun asked. "More species," Ji-woo said suddenly. He had been monitoring data from the observer ships. "Look at this. When the Arxelian ship's engines cycled, there was a harmonic spike. Their crystalline technology resonates naturally. We could use that." Hana understood immediately. "We need the observers to join us." "They won't," Seo-jun said flatly. "They think we're crazy." "Then we convince them," Hana replied. She opened a channel to all observer vessels. "This is Dr. Hana Choi of the Human Science Team. We've achieved measurable results. The void tier's expansion has been reduced by 0.5%. We can do more, but we need help." The Arxelian captain responded first. "You want us to participate in your musical performance?" "I want you to add your voice to the solution," Hana said. "Your crystalline structures resonate. Your engines create harmonics. You don't have to believe it will work. Just try. What do you have to lose?" Silence. Then, unexpectedly, another voice joined the channel. The Verdani counselor who had questioned Jin-ho in the council chambers. "I am here as an observer," she said, her rustling voice carrying across the void. "But I am also a scientist. I have been monitoring your results. They are real. They are impossible. But they are real." "Will you help us?" Hana asked. "I will inform my ship's crew of your request," the Verdani replied. "The choice is theirs." One by one, individuals from the observer ships volunteered. Not all of them, not even most, but enough. A luminary engineer who could modulate their containment suit to create pure frequency emissions. 3 Arxelians who reconfigured their ship's engines to produce harmonic pulses. A pair of Korvathi scientists who admitted they had secretly been studying human music and wanted to try something new. Lee Myung welcomed them into the performance. She worked with each species to understand their natural frequencies, their cultural expressions of rhythm and harmony. The symphony grew more complex, more beautiful. The Verdani who had volunteered had leaf-like skin that rustled with movement. She discovered that by controlling her body's natural movements, she could create rhythm patterns. She stood in her ship's observation bay, swaying and turning in what looked like dance, but was actually precise frequency manipulation. "Expansion rate down by 3%, Maya reported, her voice rising with excitement. "We're not just slowing it anymore. We're starting to reverse it." On Earth, news of the progress spread. More volunteers came forward. More ships launched. The fleet around the void tear grew from 15 human vessels to 30, then 40. Each new arrival brought more performers, more patterns, more voices to add to the growing harmony. Dr. Arav Sharma, a physicist who specialized in consciousness studies, made a crucial observation. "It's not just the sound," he said during a team meeting. "It's the intention behind it. When the performers are just following instructions, the effect is minimal. When they're actually feeling the music, creating with genuine emotion, the response is stronger." "You're saying consciousness matters?" Maya asked skeptically. "I'm saying the universe might care about authenticity," Arav replied. "The tiers are responding to genuine creative expression, not just mathematical frequencies. They're responding to life itself." Lee Myung understood. She gathered all the performers for a brief message. "Stop trying to be perfect," she told them. Stop worrying about the science. Create what you feel. Be honest in your expression. The universe is listening to your hearts, not just your instruments. The performance that followed was different, messier, less precise, but more real. Musicians poured their hopes and fears into the music. They played for the billions of lives at stake. They played for their own species, and for species they had never met. They played because creating beauty in the face of destruction felt like the most human thing they could do. The void tier began to shrink. 15% reduction, Maya whispered, hardly believing the readings. We're closing it. The observers stopped observing. They became participants. Even the Arxelian captain, who had been most skeptical, admitted that she could feel something changing, not just in the readings, but in the space around them. The first void tier was shrinking visibly now. What had been a massive wound in space, large enough to swallow moons, had contracted to half its original size. The impossible was becoming real, and the galaxy was watching. Commander Seo Jun Kim stood on the bridge of the Harmony, monitoring 3 separate operations. Teams were now positioned at all 3 void tiers, each one performing the same harmonic convergence that had proven successful in the Talassi system. The second and third tiers were responding just as well as the first. Status report from all locations, she requested. Her tactical officer pulled up the data. Talassi tier down 62% from original size. Corvian tier down 58%. Verdani tier down 55%. All 3 are continuing to contract at increasing rates. Increasing? Seo Jun asked, leaning forward. Why increasing? Dr. Choi appeared on her screen from the science deck. Because the tiers are learning, she said, and her voice carried a sense of wonder. Or reality is learning, however you want to describe it. Each contraction makes the next one easier. It's like the universe is remembering how to heal. From the second tier location, Maya's voice joined the conversation through the quantum link. We're seeing something else too. Energy readings. The tiers are releasing energy as they close, massive amounts of it. Dangerous? Seo Jun asked immediately. No, Maya replied. Clean, pure. It's like pressure being released from a valve. Dr. Choi, are you seeing this? Hana was already analyzing the data. Her hands moved across her tablet, her eyes scanning information that rewrote what the galaxy knew about space-time. The tiers weren't just damage, she said slowly. They were a release mechanism. The universe was under pressure from millennia of species manipulating quantum fields, forcing reality into unnatural configurations. These tiers were pressure valves. Jiwoo Song, monitoring from the Talassi location, added his analysis. If Dr. Choi is right, then we didn't just heal the tiers. We addressed the underlying cause. By working with natural patterns instead of against them, we released the pressure without damage. How much energy are we talking about? Seo Jun asked. Enough to power the Talassi system for 200 years, Maya answered. And that's just from the first tear. The energy is clean, stable, and we're already detecting natural collection points forming around the healing sites. Seo Jun sat back in her chair. The mission had gone from saving 47 billion lives to potentially providing energy independence to 3 entire systems. No wonder the galactic media had shifted from mockery to shock. Commander. Incoming priority message from the Galactic Council, her communications officer announced. Ambassador Park is requesting immediate contact. Jinho's face appeared on the main screen. He looked exhausted but satisfied. Behind him, Seo Jun could see the council chambers, crowded with representatives from every major species. Seo Jun, the council needs an explanation, Jinho said without preamble. How did you do what they couldn't? We asked a different question, Seo Jun replied simply. They asked how to stop the tiers. We asked what the tiers needed. A new voice interrupted, harsh and crystalline. The Arxelian chief scientist pushed into view of the camera. That is not an answer. That is philosophy. We need scientific explanation. Commander Kim exchanged glances with Dr. Choi on her screen. Hana nodded, giving permission. Seo Jun took a breath and addressed the council directly. The scientific explanation is this. Reality prefers natural patterns over forced ones. For millions of years, your species have been manipulating space-time with increasingly aggressive technology. You folded dimensions, wove quantum threads, created artificial gravity wells. Each time, you forced reality to behave in ways it didn't want to. Space-time has no wants, the Arxelian insisted. Doesn't it? Seo Jun countered. Everything in nature seeks equilibrium. Water flows downhill. Heat spreads to cold. Why would space-time be different? You kept forcing it into unnatural states, and eventually, it had to release that pressure. The void tears were the release. Jinho added his perspective from the council floor. My species is young compared to yours. We haven't had millions of years to perfect control over the universe. Maybe that's why we saw what you couldn't. We're used to working with nature, not against it. Our technology is limited, so we learn to cooperate with the world around us. The Korvathi Prime Chancellor spoke, his ancient voice carrying weight. You are saying we have been too successful? That our advancement caused this crisis? No, Hana said gently, her image appearing on the council display. Your advancement is remarkable, but advancement without balance creates problems. We didn't solve the crisis with better technology. We solved it by remembering that the universe is alive in its own way. It responds to harmony, to natural patterns, to authenticity. A luminary counselor's energy field pulsed with what the translator marked as understanding. The humans succeeded because they approached the problem with emotional intelligence, not just intellectual analysis. Yes, Seo Jun confirmed. Our performers didn't just play frequencies, they created art. They expressed genuine emotion and creativity. The universe responded to that authenticity. The Verdani counselor who had volunteered to help spoke up. I observed this directly. I participated. When I stopped thinking about the science and simply moved with the rhythm, I felt the difference. The tear didn't just respond to vibration. It responded to intention. The council chamber filled with debate. Some species argued that this was impossible, that Seo Jun was attributing consciousness to unconscious forces. Others, particularly those who had witnessed the healing firsthand, defended the human approach. Then something happened that shifted everything. The first tear is gone, Maya announced suddenly over all channels. Complete closure confirmed. The Talassi tear no longer exists. Silence fell over the council chamber. Seo Jun pulled up the visual feed. Where the massive void had dominated space for weeks, there was now something completely unexpected. A stable wormhole, gently pulsing with the released energy, connecting the Talassi system to a neighboring region peacefully. Readings confirm it's stable, Jiwoo reported, his voice filled with awe. Natural formation, safe for travel. The tear didn't just heal, it transformed into something useful. Dr. Arav's voice joined in, thick with emotion. Do you all understand what this means? The universe didn't just accept our help, it thanked us. It turned destruction into connection. The second and third tiers were following the same pattern. As they contracted, the released energy began forming stable structures. Natural bridges across space, created not through force, but through healing. Ambassador Park addressed the council again. You asked how we did what you couldn't. Here's the truth. We didn't do anything extraordinary. We just remembered something very simple. Solutions don't require force. They require understanding. You can fight against the universe, or you can dance with it. We chose to dance. The Arxelian chief scientist was silent for a long moment, her crystalline structure flickering through colors that indicated deep thought. Finally, she spoke. We have spent millennia perfecting control, mastering the laws of physics, bending reality to our will. You are saying we forgot about cooperation. Maybe, Seo-jun said gently, but it's not too late to remember. The Korvathi Prime Chancellor rose to his full impressive height. The Void Tears will be fully healed within 10 cycles at current rates. The humans have saved 47 billion lives across 3 systems. They have provided energy resources that will benefit those systems for centuries, and they have taught the galaxy a lesson we desperately needed to learn. With respect, Chancellor, Jin-Ho interrupted, we didn't teach you anything. We just showed you something you already knew, but had forgotten. Every species here has art, music, and cultural expression. Every species understands harmony and cooperation on some level. We just applied it to a problem that seemed purely scientific. Then we owe you more than gratitude, the Chancellor said. We owe you a change in perspective. The Council voted unanimously to create the Harmony Initiative, a new branch of galactic science based on the principles the humans had demonstrated. Dr. Choi was invited to head it. Species from across the galaxy began sharing their artistic and cultural approaches to problem-solving. But the most remarkable changes happened quietly. Scientists began including artists in their research teams. Engineers consulted with musicians about harmonic frequencies. The rigid separation between science and art that had defined galactic culture for millions of years began to soften. On the Harmony, Seo-jun watched the last moments of the first Void Tears transformation. The new wormhole pulsed gently, stable, and beautiful. Around it, the released energy was already being harvested by newly deployed collection stations. We did it, she said quietly to her crew. We did more than that, her tactical officer replied, gesturing to the communication feeds flooding in from across the galaxy. We changed how they think. Commander Kim smiled. Good. Maybe the next crisis, they'll try dancing first instead of fighting. The ceremony hall on the Galactic Council Station had never been more crowded. Representatives from every known species packed the enormous space, with thousands more watching through quantum feeds across the galaxy. The Void Tears were completely healed. All 47 billion lives had been saved. The new wormholes were already facilitating peaceful trade and travel between distant systems, and the humans responsible for all of it stood quietly in a small group at the center of the hall, looking somewhat uncomfortable with the attention. Ambassador Jin-Ho Park wore a simple formal suit, dark blue with a small earth pin on the lapel. Beside him stood Commander Seo-jun Kim in her dress uniform, Dr. Hana Choi in academic robes, and representatives from the teams that had worked at all 3 tier sites. They looked tired. They looked relieved. They did not look like the heroes the galaxy was celebrating. The Korvathi Prime Chancellor began the ceremony. His voice, amplified across the hall, carried the weight of his thousands of years. 47,312,600,018 lives. That is the exact number of sentient beings who would have died if the Void Tears had not been healed. That number represents children and elders, scientists and artists, the famous and the forgotten. Every single one of them is alive today because of the beings standing before us. Applause erupted. A sound translated across species into everything from crystal chimes to energy pulses to traditional clapping. The humans accepted it with polite nods, but Jin-Ho noticed they all looked slightly pained by the praise. But, the Chancellor continued, raising one of his forearms for silence, the humans did not just save lives. They transformed how we understand the universe itself. He gestured to a holographic display that appeared above the crowd. It showed the before and after of all 3 Void Tears. The terrifying wounds in space, then the beautiful stable wormholes that had replaced them. Then it showed something else, energy readings from the new structures, projected to last for centuries. The Talassi system, the Corvian system, and the Verdani system now have access to clean, stable energy that will power their civilizations for generations. This gift, unintended but profound, will lift billions out of energy poverty. It will enable scientific advancement that we can barely imagine. And it came not from conquest or control, but from healing. More applause. Jin-Ho caught Seo-jun's eye. She gave him a tiny shrug that said clearly, "We didn't plan for any of this." The Chancellor invited Jin-Ho to speak. The ambassador walked to the podium, his steps careful on the unfamiliar station flooring. He looked out at the sea of alien faces, at species that had existed for millions of years before humans had even discovered fire. "Thank you," he said simply, "but I need to be honest with you all. We didn't do anything extraordinary." Confused murmurs rippled through the hall. The Chancellor tilted his massive head, surprised by the opening. Jin-Ho continued. "Every species in this hall has music. Every species has art. Every species understands harmony and cooperation. What we did was apply those universal principles to a scientific problem. We didn't invent a new technology or discover a new law of physics. We just remembered something simple. Solutions don't require force. They require understanding." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "For weeks before we arrived, the greatest minds in the galaxy threw the most advanced technology at the void tiers. And every attempt made things worse. Not because you weren't smart enough or your technology wasn't powerful enough, but because you were asking the wrong question. You asked, 'How do we stop this?' Jin-Ho said. We asked, 'What does this need?' That one change in perspective made all the difference." The Arxelian chief scientist, who had been skeptical from the beginning, stood. Her crystalline form caught the light as she spoke. "Ambassador Park, your modesty is admirable but inaccurate. No other species thought to approach the crisis the way you did. That is what makes it extraordinary." "Maybe," Jin-Ho acknowledged, "but I think it's because we're young. We've only been in space for a few hundred years. We haven't had time to forget that nature is smarter than we are. Our technology is limited. So we learned to work with what we have instead of forcing what we want." Commander Kim joined him at the podium. "If I may add something," she said. "Our species has a short lifespan compared to most of yours. The Korvathi live for thousands of years. The Luminari are essentially immortal. We barely make it to 100. Maybe that limitation is actually an advantage. We can't afford to spend centuries perfecting control over nature. We have to cooperate with it quickly, or we don't survive." Dr. Choi was invited to speak next. She approached the podium with her tablet, always more comfortable with data than speeches. "The Harmony Initiative has received applications from 42 different species who want to participate. I want to thank everyone for that. But I also want to clarify what this initiative is not." She pulled up a new display. "This is not about humans teaching other species. This is about all of us learning from each other. Every species here has something to contribute. The Arxelian understanding of crystalline resonance helped refine our harmonic models. The Verdani connection to natural rhythms improved our biological integration. The Luminari energy manipulation taught us about pure frequency expression. What we're creating," Hana continued, "is not a human methodology. It's a galactic one. It combines scientific rigor with artistic intuition, mathematical precision with emotional authenticity, the logic of the mind with the wisdom of the heart." She looked directly at the assembled scientists and counselors. "Some of you still doubt that consciousness and intention matter in physics. I understand. I was trained in traditional quantum mechanics, too. But the data doesn't lie. The void tears responded differently to genuine creative expression versus calculated frequencies. We can debate why that is, but we cannot deny that it happened." Jiwoo Song, the young data analyst who had discovered the natural frequency patterns, was invited to share his findings. He looked nervous, barely 25 years old and speaking to the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "I'm just going to show you the numbers," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "This is a comparison of the tier's response to the Arxelian quantum weaving versus our harmonic convergence. Same energy input, different approaches." The graphs told the story. Forced manipulation had made the tiers grow. Harmonic cooperation had made them heal. "The universe prefers cooperation over control," Jiwoo concluded. "That's not philosophy, that's measurable physics." The ceremony continued with formal recognition. Medals were presented, titles were granted, and offers of resources poured in from across the galaxy. But the humans consistently deflected the individual praise, emphasizing the collaborative nature of the solution. When Lee Myung, the composer who had coordinated the musical performances, was recognized, she said something that resonated deeply. "I spent my whole life creating music for humans. This mission taught me that music isn't just for us. It's a universal language. The Void Tear heard our symphony and chose to harmonize instead of destroy. That's not my achievement. That's the universe showing us it wants to create beauty, not chaos." The Verdani counselor, who had been the first observer to volunteer, stood and spoke without invitation. Her leaf-like skin rustled with emotion. "I must confess something. When I first heard the human proposal, I thought it was foolish desperation. Music to heal space-time? Impossible. But I watched them try anyway. I watched them fail at first, then adjust, then succeed. And I realized they succeeded because they were willing to look foolish. They cared more about finding a solution than protecting their pride." She turned to address the other counselors directly. "How many problems have we failed to solve because we were too proud to try approaches that seemed beneath our dignity? How many lives could we have saved if we had been willing to look foolish in pursuit of answers?" The hall fell silent. It was an uncomfortable truth, but an important one. The ceremony concluded with the announcement of new galactic policies. The Harmony Initiative would receive full funding. Every major research institution would be required to include artistic and cultural advisors. A new educational exchange would bring young beings from all species to study both science and art together. But the real changes were happening in smaller ways, across thousands of worlds. Scientists who had worked in isolation for decades were reaching out to musicians and artists. Engineers were consulting with poets. Mathematicians were attending dance performances looking for patterns. After the ceremony, the human delegation gathered in their quarters. They were exhausted, ready to go home. Earth was calling them back. There were families to return to, normal lives to resume. "Did we really change anything?" Marcus, the tactical officer from New Zealand, asked. "Or will they forget this in a few years and go back to the old ways?" "Maybe some will," Seo Jun admitted, "but some won't. And those who don't will teach others. Change doesn't happen all at once." Hana was reviewing messages on her tablet. "I've got 23 universities requesting curriculum consultations. 47 research institutions want to establish exchange programs. This is real. They're actually interested in learning." Jin Ho sat by the window, looking out at the station's central plaza. He could see beings from a dozen different species talking together, some of them holding musical instruments. "We didn't set out to change galactic culture," he said quietly. "We just wanted to save lives." "Maybe that's why it worked," Lee Myung suggested. She was cleaning her violin, preparing it for the journey home. "We weren't trying to prove anything or show anyone up. We were just trying to help." "Very human of us," Seo Jun said with a smile. Later, the team gathered at a small restaurant in the station's human quarter, a place that served Korean food. They sat around a table, not as heroes, but as colleagues who had worked hard and succeeded. "Did you ever doubt we could do it?" Maya asked Ji-woo, the youngest member of the science team. Ji-woo laughed softly. "Every single moment. Every time I looked at the data, every time I presented a finding, I thought, this is crazy, this won't work, we're going to fail. But you kept going, Maya observed. Because doubt doesn't mean stop trying, Jiwoo said. It just means work harder to find proof. The conversation drifted to normal things. Families back home. Plans for the future. Someone made a joke about writing a cookbook of recipes that could heal the universe. They laughed together, the easy laughter of people who had faced the impossible and survived. Outside the restaurant window, the first students from other species were arriving at the station. Young beings from across the galaxy coming to learn what the humans had demonstrated. Not just the science, but the philosophy. Not just the techniques, but the approach. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the quietest voice offers the wisest solution. That sometimes the newest member of the council sees what the oldest members have forgotten. That cooperation achieves what control cannot. That the universe responds to creativity and authenticity as much as to logic and force. And Earth, that small blue world in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy, had shown them all something simple but profound. When faced with the impossible, stay calm, believe in cooperation, and never be afraid to try something no one has attempted before. The humans went home. The galaxy remembered.